Welcome to Actually Controller, the podcast that is actually Controller, and we are actually in control of everything you are hearing right now. I'm so very sorry.
That is no longer around.
I think that's semantics. So for me, we've talked about covers and tributes. To me, the difference between those two is, and we had a band come on a couple weeks ago here locally that I wouldn't even call them a tribute. I would call them a cover band because they did the music as best they could. They weren't to the T, but none of them really embodied the artist that they were tribute to. An actual tribute would be, to your point, to Kiss.
Doing a
They're
full
going to come out
performance
full
of it.
makeup, full boots and shoes. And, like we're literally tributing this band and doing things the way that band would do.
Do what we can to be.
That's one thing. The tribute band I'm in, we try to like costuming. I know what I wear is very simple, but researching the drummer that I'm emulating, that's what he wears on stage.
No, you're
literally
still
what he wears on
regardless
stage.
It's simple. You're steering into.
So we're not covering them. We're tributing him.
Yeah.
Or them. So that's what you're referring to as a band that might cover the band and play it well, but they're not really paying tribute to them.
Yeah, it's the difference between I'm trying to embody the character of the person that plays this rather than I am just playing this.
Yeah.
But like I said, to what you're also saying is that to be a tribute band for a band that's still active or every couple of years they come back or whatever. For example, there's a build coming up in our area that has Hailstorm. Hailstorm is very, very active. They just don't come to Fort Wayne anymore because they're, let's face it, they're way too big for Pierre's.
For our market.
So they're waiting for probably the next Coliseum tour or arena tour that they can get on. But they're coming to town, and part of me is I'm on both sides of this fence for real.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, you're doing a tribute to a band that's still active. Like if I wanted to go see Hailstorm, I would go see Hailstorm.
Yeah, I'd make plans. I'd go on a trip. I'd go
tickets,
see
locations, things like that. The other side is if you're going to do a tribute to Hailstorm, well, you need to emulate Hailstorm. Otherwise, you're a cover band.
Yeah. Well, and I'll agree with that one. And I guess I'm a little bit of a different boat for the tribute because I get where Chad was coming from as far as that he would prefer a tribute over a cover, and not saying that there's no tributes because, I mean, for instance, you just ended up getting me tickets for a tribute show that's coming up.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I took my son to the last time this tribute band was through, and they did a phenomenal job fully recreating a lot of the elements because I had seen the band that they're doing a tribute towards as well. So I can have that reference of the original band did this, and they did this.
However, I haven't seen that band since like 97, so I'm excited.
Just the amount of he didn't say the name. I have to give him credit, man. Like you didn't even drop who you were talking about.
Hey, you're welcome.
That was legitimate the entire time.
What you're saying is they're attributing this band that has done reunions and has done shows. We won't say how inactive they've been.
Yeah.
But when they do happenstance play or drop an album every 11 years or
13.
whatever.
Name drop, we're not doing it. You can figure it out.
So this tribute band, technically, I mean, they emulate them. So whether or not this national ever comes around or does rejuvenate or whatever.
No, and I agree with that, but I was going to go with the other angle of that though is I will say that, and this might be kind of in part to where your talk was with certain bands classifying themselves as a tribute but more coming across as a cover. I will say that I feel like it's been within the past 2 years or so, but the quote-unquote tribute market now has exploded exponentially, and not necessarily in a good way because it's not like it's a...
You know why?
I get...
No.
I get there's certain components of it, but to finish my thought on it, it was more of it feels less on a lot of them. I'm not going to say all tribute bands, obviously, but it feels like less of them are doing it as a passion and an authentic want of tributing to the original band.
What you're seeing is you're seeing the cover bands So cover bands, we all know. Okay, let's talk finances for a hot second. We know original music's usually like you get bare minimum.
You're 10 to 15% of any of the stuff.
Cover bands, they make some money because they're playing. They've got a built-in crowd wherever they go. Tribute bands, potentially, that's where the lucrative money is. But the bottom line is the reason why people are moving to tribute bands nostalgia.
Yeah.
Oh no, I fully get
Well,
that.
and even coming out of COVID, when we had basically you may have had a year and a half to 2 years down according to COVID, and going out to some of these shows. So some of these shows are pushed a little heavier according to the populace.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Country and karaoke. So
yeah,
tribute is really just an extension of covers.
Yeah.
No, and I will give you that. And I get the nostalgia part and everything. It's a little frustrating, and I think it's mostly, and this also earmarks, I guess, all of our age in this one, but majority of the bands that are getting tributed nowadays are very prevalent for the most part. Obviously, the Hailstorm
90s.
One, not so much for me or anything.
90s stuff.
But the 90s, early 2000s stuff where I have a fondness.
Nostalgia.
Well, I have a fondness towards the original band, and for the most part, though, I'm not getting it itched by these tributes. I'm getting pissed by these tributes because I'm seeing a perpetual disservice done because it's a lot of them putting very little effort into actually trying to do it.
Yeah.
They're just going up there in their street clothes that they just got out of working their mechanic job of, and we're a said band.
We'll have to talk offline because those aren't the bands I would like to be playing with.
No, and
So
I mean, that's us.
It's a very unique show for me because I'm obviously involved in every facet of the industry here in Fort Wayne.
Hence why this is a good topic for this band to have.
So if you don't know,
on a podcast.
I'm in 5 different bands. Obviously, I'm the drummer for Contrøller. Been with you guys February, I think, is when.
Yeah, we will
March
be
is when I first got offered the position.
About a year now.
Actually, we started doing it in January in rehearsal. So yeah, we're at a year mark now.
So, and coincidentally, the reason why I started is because my tribute band was coming home, and we were doing a show, and we needed an original band to help us out.
Yep.
And 2 of us instantly thought of Contrøller, and you guys had 2 drummers who were neither one were available or able.
Yeah, we
and
had 2 backups.
I was absolutely adamant about booking you guys, so I learned your set.
Yep.
So
You did a
I've got the
fabulous
tribute
job.
band, I've got Contrøller, I'm in an original post-grunge rock band who just this past weekend's played covers
Yep.
for money. That's why we did it.
Yep.
I ain't gonna lie. And then I'm in a cover band that plays through the decades, which I'm not going to mention their names. And then I'm in a blues rock band that also just kind of chill and laid back. So
And he chose us still anyway because we're cool.
9 years ago, when I first got into music, live music, and became a drummer instead of
Indoctrinated into the scene.
well, instead of a spectator, right?
Yep.
As a spectator, you don't see this side of what
No,
we're,
you really
what we're
don't.
talking about. You don't see this side of
No.
it.
It can be fun. It can be ugly.
I swore off cover bands. I swore off. Tribute bands weren't even a real big thing.
No.
No.
No, not really.
I was like, nope, originals. Like, I want to support original music. I want to see the next band rise up, and I still do.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, I got a show coming up in July. Bring a regional band that is actually on the rise. So I want to see the originals thrive and rive, but personally,
And
I just want to uck and play.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, you just want to uck and play. But
Your mic might be dead.
why?
I couldn't
Did it
tell.
flash?
I thought I saw
a
it
bar.
flash.
Oh, okay.
He's got a bar.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and that's kind of what I was
You gotta
referring to.
pee though.
Well, real quick sidebar before you get up and walk away, and then we can talk, and then you can come back and we'll
No,
fill
it's
you
cool.
in. But
Just sitting on my bladder. It's all right.
But I mean, and that was in regards to kind of the point that I brought up earlier.
What,
not
sitting on
stating
the
that
bladder?
all not stating that all musicians that are in covers or in tributes
No.
are solely doing it for a money grab or anything like that. There are certain musicians that are actually wanting to do it because they actually have a passion for performing.
And that's really it for me, because like I know in jest I've talked about, and I might 2 years from now move to Nashville and be a full-time cover drummer. I can make some money down there doing that. I really could, but I don't.
We've
don't
talked to
do
our
this.
kid about considering doing that for session purposes and everything.
Yeah. It's
That's
just
what
not.
my old drummer out of Mob 9 did. He's down in
It'd be great to be
Tennessee
immersed in a
and
scene
Kentucky.
that's all about music, but it's all about playing covers.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the passion for me is creating. The passion for me is performing. So like even with the covers, even with the tributes, even with all of them, like I do just want to play. And the thing is you do have those musicians who are money grabbing.
Yes.
And we've got that push pull between the bands that hey, we
Well,
won't play
and I
for
don't-
less than X.
I don't think even to put it on money grabbing, because I think that's kind of
no. I totally will.
I think
I totally will. I wrote a whole fucking song about it because I'm going to interrupt you because when my first project got our first opportunity for a national, we were shit on.
That's passion.
We were shit on for playing a club that could hold 1,800 people because we played the show for free.
That's fair.
We were shit on because
not that you got shit on, but I okay.
We were shit on because musicians are like, why didn't you ask for pay? Why didn't you ask for this?
Because you're setting the wrong market.
Why did you get that?
Expectations.
We are undersaturating. We are underserving them, and I see that, and I totally agree with that. But what I understood as a business person and as somebody who wanted
was that
exposure.
Yeah, get paid in all the exposures. We'll talk about exposures later on.
That might be a new
so there you go.
Podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, so as somebody who recognized that, I knew that if I said no out of principle, because I deserve to get paid,
right,
the next band up is still going to take it. Someone's going to take that spot. And I'd rather play in front of 800 people, which we did, than sit at home and wonder, what am I going to do now? Let's go to the local jam and...
Yeah.
I gotta quietly disagree because I think there is a standard that people decide upon for themselves outright. So it's not like a judgment against you if you opt in or opt out of whatever. Because man, I'm not one to talk. I was a sound guy at one of like the grossest clubs here in town, and y'all know it. So whatever.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So whatever in that regard, but moreover, like I can't hate on one person over another that says, "Hey, I won't do this with my particular like the asset that I have, which is how often I play, where I play, or whatever." Like you set that standard. That's 100% up to you.
That's the thing is at the time we were the new band.
Yeah.
Well, so it was more of a, if we don't do this, someone else is going to do it.
Right.
This is
and
an opportunity
I'm going to agree with both of you
exposure.
and disagree with both of you, though.
Here's the thing. If you had the opportunity to play in front of 1,000 people, and the only caveat is you don't get paid, you just show up and play.
Right.
Would you do it?
Well, and under certain circumstances, and that's where
I'm not talking out when you don't have to go to Chicago.
Oh, no, and I get that.
It's literally in your backyard.
And
for me, it's literally in my backyard.
Right.
It's literally in your backyard. You just show up, you play, you have a good time doing your passion.
Right.
In front of 1,000 people.
Right.
And leave it on the table.
Then why not? Yeah.
And I get that, and that's why I was stating I agree and disagree with both of you on this one, because in one respect I completely and utterly get, because we've been in this boat before of trying to set our own market rate, because that's the reality. At the end of the day, if you're doing this long enough, you've got to start viewing this as a business, and you got to be able to set your market rate.
And then on top of that, your product is only as valuable as you decide to sell
as the value you set it at.
Yeah,
yes.
and then on the back end of that, to what regard that people are willing to buy it at. Now,
yes.
If you have a more scarce product,
the one thing that was born out of this, that has been brought up a couple times here and there sporadically is union. We don't have anything like that. So what you're saying is we have, and again, we took it because someone else would have.
No, and
until
I agree.
You can get every musical group in our region to be like, hey, we're an original rock band, you're an original rock band, you're an original metal band, you're original, until everybody can say this is our base minimum.
We almost
someone's going to take that next job for $20 and a blowjob.
Funny story. We nearly had that early '90s with bands. Okay, I'm going to name drop old '90s bands that don't exist. Okay, so like I'm like from Industrial Strength.
Well, yeah, and you got the DCS boys,
the DCS guys. We had
Opaque,
even Lollygagger, Opaque.
I want to interrupt though. Hold on, I want to interrupt. So when you're talking about these guys, when they started earning their payout, was it from day one?
Yeah.
Day one, you walk in a club, say, "Hey."
It was also a different world in music.
It was.
Yeah, because at this point in time, bands were still getting signed to big labels with massive advances.
Yeah, because
and still getting put out on tour.
And
with
again, it was exclusivity. Not everybody was playing an instrument in an organized fashion.
You couldn't pad those numbers with like YouTube. You couldn't pad those numbers with Facebook. You couldn't pad. None of those places existed. So they didn't exist at all.
I shared a story of that like, tour that came through.
Yeah.
And I saw some video of this club. So there is an individual. We won't name drop, but they were coming through. They were looking for some local acts, and on a business level, it didn't make sense. We weren't going to get paid. We're going to have to push some tickets, which I'm good with. The split idea, earn my keep kind of thing. It's not a pay to play per se. So that's a topic.
That's a whole other podcast.
Podcast number 5.
But
yeah,
after throwing it to you had made the point that this artist has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but zero social interaction.
Yeah.
And so when the show finally came, I intentionally looked for people that I knew were going to be there to follow live videos and pictures, and it was an 1800 club,
capacity
1800 capacity club, maybe 200 people in there.
Yep.
And so when you have that kind of sparse participation, it looks dead.
It looks bad.
Well, and not only to that, but it also it proves within our current market being different than our old market, where you could trust your numbers a lot more back in the day than you can with now, because there's enough bots, there's enough ways that you can pay your way up the food chain. Not necessarily that people are still going to genuinely care, but that you will at least be viewed as somebody that venues should pay attention to, promoters should pay attention to.
If you have 5,000 people on your MySpace.
Right.
Back in the day, those
were actually 5,000 people on your MySpace.
Actually 5,000.
Whereas nowadays you can bot it up with enough promo companies 10K. And enough PRs to get all the way up to the 100, 200K and everything like that. But you genuinely maybe have 6,000 people out of that 200K that interact.
I wouldn't even put it that high.
That will actually interact with your stuff.
So agreeing with agreeing with the interaction, but the fact is this tour was coming through, and the club announced that the club has done a wonderful job over the last few years of supporting acts and posting and just communicating shows, like whether people have their head in the sand or not, but they share it. They've got the socials, they're busy on the socials, and they do this club,
I fully agree with
has
that.
been doing a very good job of supporting music in general, and so they're supporting it. But every comment I saw was who.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's he? What does he do?
Well,
never heard of him.
See, here's the difficulty is that
I want to compound that by saying I played with this musician when we opened for Puddle of Mud. Name drop. We opened for Puddle of Mud, and this individual probably bought onto the show and got a prime spot. He's already been through Fort Wayne, and people still don't know who he is.
Yep.
Well, so here's the thing, though. Promotion's a real is a real slippery slope, because depending on where all you're deciding to run, whatever tour package you've bought onto, if you've done it that way, or if you're trying to create a tour, trying to actually promote to the area where you're going to play is a very difficult thing.
Oh, it is. I mean, we have that problem on the tour that we just ran this summer. You are trying
to reach out to a group who is otherwise inaccessible and are the scene. And unless you have a direct connect to that scene, a lot of the times it will stay closed to you. So that if I had to give anybody, from whether they be 100% original or 100% cover, 100% tribute, a heads up, get to know wherever you're playing like weeks before, like months before, if you can.
Well, and there can be that can be its own thing altogether too, of like different tactics of good way to actually promote and run your own PR and stuff like that.
But realistically, that's the back end that gets dropped a lot of the time.
It is
that you got an original band that feels like it's not getting its drag because there's so many cover bands in, but it's not. It's that they have no reach to reach the scene, and let's negative.
So you're talking in terms of outside of your own home base.
Yeah, well, and exactly, because let's be real, we're all very snobby music listeners.
Here's the thing.
To be fair,
actually,
we are all snobby music listeners. If it isn't what we want to hear, if it isn't what we feel really fits with our scene, we're not going to be a part of it.
But that's bringing it back to the topic, but that's why covers do so well.
Yeah.
Because there's that nostalgia, there's that familiarity, there's that I don't have to come in and I can come in and have a good time with my friends. I don't have to focus on the song because I know it. My brain will react to it because I've heard it, and I can talk. So, for example, this past weekend I played a cover show. It was the busiest that bar has ever been that we played, and I'm not touting. It was busy.
Yeah,
I talked to the owner, I talked to the bartender. Like we had a really good weekend. Both nights were great, but in between songs, nobody was cheering.
No.
We would finish the song, it'd be dead. You're talking a bar full of 100, 120 people.
Yep.
Dead silence because
Dude,
nobody
you're no better
gave
than
a
the radio.
shit.
You're better
because you're playing songs they know. They can hang out, relax, get live music.
You
and be
are
with their
the
friends.
over amplified jukebox, and
are.
that's the reality. And that's okay if you're a musician who is comfortable with that. And that's not to.
Oh, it was
that,
awkward.
Well, no. I'm not stating that you were. I'm saying that there are certain cover bands though
was awkward.
that walk into those markets though, into those environments, and they already know that that's going to be the reaction they're going to get, or lack thereof reaction they're going to get, and that doesn't bother them there because they're either there, one, for the paycheck, or two, because they're just wanting to perform and they don't care how
So
reactionary.
I'll tell you, that was the number one reason why we were brought on board to this bar, because we for years I tried to get us in there, and then they thought we were an original act, which we are an original act, but we did covers on the side, and then they finally gave us a chance. And the reason why we get to return is because we interact with the crowd.
Yeah.
We are active with them. We're not just up there getting our paycheck. We're not just up there, slinging some sticks and slapping some strings or whatever. We're trying to, even though they didn't this weekend, we're trying to engage the crowd and present it as a show. Like, there's even a moment in the show where we break down, we go acoustic for a minute. Because anytime you see a real arena show or an actual hour-long set by some musicians, my tribute band does that.
Yep.
We do that. It's part of the experience is getting that intimacy of, we're not just 3, 4, 5 dudes up here making music. We're making music for you, and we want to interact with you.
Yeah, you're making a performance for the actual receiver of it and everything. And I guess this is where it kind of comes back to where, to wrap up my statement earlier of I agree and disagree with both of you on this one. It's agreeing that, yes, you need to, again, set your own market value, because at the end of the day, if you are your own business, which any band that's been doing it long enough really needs to view themselves as.
Yeah.
And and if you do have the opportunity for the 800,000 cap head show to walk in front of and everything like that, is it something you should do for no paycheck? And I would say yes and no. And not only because if it's,
I don't know about 800,000.
Well, no, 800 or 1,000.
Okay,
800 to
I was like, hands down, I'm
He
saying
said
yes.
800
Whose dick do I need to
1,000.
suck for that?
No.
Not
Fully
800.
agree with that.
Have you
one.
seen the O2?
Not
Yeah,
800,000.
800,000 is a whole separate conversation.
I mean-
800 to 1,000, but
Can you imagine the merch sales on that?
oh god, that would be amazing. But that would
Even
be
if you were just selling one sock.
yeah. But that's
One sock,
that
one
kind of
sock.
comes into where I was going to go with that.
Only
The
selling
800
the
to
left
1,000 cap. If you're not getting a paycheck, are you happening to be in a market where we happen to have this venue that we're talking about that doesn't do this, but a lot of venues their size do, to where it doesn't matter how big of a band you are, they're going to do a merch draw off of you, where all of a sudden you are getting a cut off of that show. You're not getting paid, and you're also still having to pay 20 to 25%.
Because it's been 9 years, and I've just recently heard about that. And
We've dealt with it before.
No, we've dealt with it
I-
on the front. I've
I
actually
would
dealt with
probably
that with
I would
Mob
probably
9
refuse the show
beforehand,
at that
too.
point.
Yeah, and
No,
that's
I've dealt with it on the front end with Mob 9 after. I've dealt with it with Mob 9 after we had like contracts signed, even where they were trying to flip shit.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's a agree and disagree, because there's so many unfortunate variables nowadays that under that exact circumstance, I see it as a win, because knowing the venue, knowing how they operate, knowing that you're not going to get bent over as an opening band, and all of a sudden some guy walking up and you're unaware of stuff, especially when you're a new band, because if you're a new band, you don't know about a lot of those components.
Well, like I said, even as a veteran, I didn't know this, and this was a thing until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, I get that, but I'm saying at that show that you guys took, because you were the fresh band, you were new to the scene, you were trying to make a name for yourselves.
Speaking of which, I got our next topic.
But
ultimately what you're referring to, and this goes to covers, this goes to originals, tributes. At the end of the day, you have to view yourself as a business.
Yes.
And furthermore, you have to understand how you operate within the other business entities, the promoters, the buyers, the venues. And again, we know what bars and clubs and places we can and cannot play. Like, why doesn't this original band play a winery? Well, because wineries, they're looking for bands that play like Goo Goo Dolls and like Real Big Fish and like poppy, dancey tunes or acoustic-y type stuff. They're not looking for a post-grunge rock band. They're definitely not looking for a metal band when everybody wants to sit around and drink wine with the pinkies out and have some good food.
Yep.
So you have to recognize your genre. You have to recognize your product.
You have to know your wheelhouse.
You do, and you have to go further. Like, you have to know the other business entities that you're working with. What other bands are you working with when you set up a show? What bands are you walking into when they're trying to set you up with a show? So that's how I've operated from day one. As much fun and as much as I want to play out 365. As much as I want to do that, as much as I will play a club for 800 to 1,000 people for free, only if it makes sense.
Yes.
Only if it makes sense for me, only if it makes sense for the band, and only if it makes sense for the club. I'm not going to roll into, what's the club that was here recently? And I think they're still around, like Bar 165. It was a very high-end, almost bougie, but not quite, a step above like Applebee's, kind of like a Granite City. And I'm dropping a bunch of restaurants because it doesn't matter. But like, it was, but they had a stage and they were there to have bands so they can entertain their weekend crowd.
Right.
But in no way, shape, or form would I ever book any of my bands.
What up, Denny's? We still know you.
The point is, several people, I mean, I'm talking like dozens of people were like, why don't you book here? Why don't you book here? They're looking for bands. Every time something we had posted that they're looking for bands, someone would share it to me, and I'm like, that's not my niche. That's not where we belong. I don't want to earn my paycheck that way because it does all of us a disservice.
Yes. Well, and not only the disservice component of it, it's a very annoying, and I completely get it, because not everybody is intimate with the knowledge that we have as musicians, especially active playing musicians, that I know it's in good heart, but it is very annoying when you have the perpetual friend or fan, you need to play this venue, not knowing the market that bar or that venue specifically requires out of their bands. And it's one of those, I'm not saying that we wouldn't have fun there. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm against playing there.
Right.
I am saying they're against us playing there.
And not even that. I think there are some places that are naive enough that would book you for your first time, but it'll also be your last time. Only because they know that you're a band. You're like, hey, we can offer this kind of music. We can do this. It's cool. Let's get you in. So and so booked you. Like that's how we played. There's a club about an hour north of here. We played because someone suggested us, and they were an employee of this club, suggested us, and we still get like 1 or 2 dates, but we don't do well. But the owner loves us, so we get to keep playing there. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. But if you want to book us, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
So next week's topic, if you join us here, is going to be about whether or not it's pay to play, or if you are willing to sell tickets to play your own show.
I fully agree that that's a good episode topic.
If you are willing to throw in and throw money down to just be on a show.
Yeah,
we love
full
your guts.
buy-in.
I hope you guys are doing awesome.
Gonna tie this one up too. Also, this is part 2 of this episode because
part 1.
No, this is part 2 because this episode went way longer than we ever intended it to be.
But thank you guys
thank you for checking out part 2.
Thank you for joining us. We love your guts. Have an awesome night.
Enjoy.
Later.
Thank you for listening to Actually Contrøller. If you liked what you heard, please consider following us on all our socials. You can easily find us on all the different platforms by going to linktree/Contrøller33 or scan the QR code if you are watching the video version of this episode. Thank you.